Hey there, welcome back to my channel. I'm Cybersecurity Mag, and as always, I'm super stoked that you're here. Today's video, I'm going to be showing you my own personal resume, as you can see on the screen before you, and going over some pro tips that I have in building resumes that are going to assist you in getting interviews. I did use this resume of mine to recently get several interviews, namely at IBM's X-Force, FireEye Mandiant, and Cisco Talos, which, if you know pretty much anything about cybersecurity, those are three of some of the world's most renowned cybersecurity firms to work at. And I want to give you all the information I can to help you if you're trying to get your first cybersecurity job, if you're trying to level up and get a more senior role in cybersecurity. All of these tips are going to be applicable to you regardless of where you're at in your journey. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. So starting from a more holistic approach, you'll probably look down here and be like, oh my goodness, Meg, your resume is 3 pages long and over 1,100 words. And you're probably like, girl, that's long. And I'm here to tell you, it's not long if everything you're putting into your resume is poignant, useful, relevant, and supports the fact that you are the best candidate for the job. That's not just me saying that, that's me having done my research and spoken to probably 5 to 7 different recruiters and HR talent acquisition people who are colleagues and friends of mine, and them telling me, Meg, it's such a myth that I'm here to demystify it that you should only have a 1 page resume. That's absolutely ridiculous. If there are things that are pertinent to the job that are going to help you stand out, you should be putting it in your resume and not worrying so much about the length of it. Where you're going to worry about the length of the resume is when you're just putting in filler things that are detracting from the overall message of the resume, things that are going to be the fluff that aren't relevant and aren't going to help you stand out on paper. So just as a quick overview of my resume, you can see it here. It's pretty, I want to say, I mean, I like how it looks aesthetically. I think it's quite pleasing. I think the red's a nice little touch. I like how this part is centered and then the rest of it is all left aligned. My spacing is all on point. Spacing bothers the heck out of me. I think it bothers the heck out of a lot of people. So always try to keep your spacing on point if you can. But nonetheless, here you see it is 3 full pages long. It's broken down into sections, which each have the red title at the top to kind of separate it from the prior one. And as I'm sure you've heard 10,000 times, you always want to start with the most important things at the top. So I put my CISSP title right after my name just to make sure that it is easily seen. It's something I'm quite proud of, and that's why I put it at the top. No shame in my being proud of myself. Of course, I have my contact information up here. I personally would not put my social media stuff if I weren't using it for more of a business purpose. So obviously, if you're watching this video, you know a little bit about me. I utilize social media to proliferate free cybersecurity information to try to empower people to help get them into cybersecurity or push them more towards the InfoSec field. And personally, I felt that that really contributed to my overall resume. So I wanted anyone who was reading my resume to go to those social media links and view the initiative and the projects that I have going. I thought it made me stand out and be more well-rounded. If I was not utilizing Twitter or YouTube for this very specific purpose, I would not be putting those on my resume. So keep that in mind. Obviously, I redacted my own PII from here, and the PII or potentially, too in-depth information from the companies that I've worked at just for the safety of myself and the companies that I've worked for. I work in security, so got to keep things secure. Anyways, one thing that I think hugely helps people stand out on resumes are your objectives. And to be honest, I am not a very simple and straightforward person. I am full of a lot of personality. I'm witty, I'm funny, I love making relationships with people at work, getting to know them well. That's something, being a team player is really important to me. So I always try to let a little bit of my personality shine through in my resume. You don't want to come off as crazy, but I do personally think that it's really helpful if you're not so rigid that you come off as just, a piece of paper. So my objective, and I don't remember if this was actually the objective I submitted word for word when I was submitting my resumes, because I just edited this resume, but I'm pretty sure, paraphrasing, this is exactly what it said: to utilize my extensive incident response, team leadership skills, and threat hunting capabilities to assist in keeping organizations' names out of the evening news. And anyone who works in incident response, you'll know that's one of the huge goals of incident response is to keep companies' names in a negative connotation out of the news, right? Branding is obviously hugely impactful. So for me, my objective was to speak to whoever was reading this resume and let them know, like, I am apprised of what the goal is here. We don't want someone to get ransomware and then they're going to end up in the news and the stock is going down. All the clients are like, we don't know if we can trust that brand anymore. So the point being here, choose an objective that's going to be intimately specific to the field that you're applying for. Make it stand out a little bit. Maybe put a little bit of personality into it. Catch the reader's eye, get their attention, but make it something that's going to be hugely relevant to them and going to speak to them. Put yourself in their shoes. What would they want to be reading? For me personally, certifications in education are something, again, that I'm proud of having earned. I think they help me stand out. So they were placed at the top of my resume. I have the CISSP as well as the CompTIA Security Plus, education, master's, and bachelor's. I do put what years they were earned because it wasn't that long ago for me. Of course, if you're going to be putting years, you want to put them in chronological order, but reverse. So the most recent first, and then the older one secondary behind it. And experience. So you can see, for me specifically, it's just personal to me. I worked at the same company for almost for like 4 years, almost 5 years. So I only included my professional experience at that one company because all of my experience prior to working at Tech Data, as you'll see as I go through this, it was more beginning of life experience. I worked at Starbucks. I don't think the person reading my resume needs to know I worked at Starbucks. This is my adult career life. I personally wouldn't put something on your resume from when you were 16, 17, 18, unless it's relevant to the task at hand, or unless you're trying to fill a space. Perhaps you have a gap or several years gap worth of space that you need to explain on your resume, then it would make perfect sense. But in my case, and this needs to be analyzed on a case by case scenario, you shouldn't just copy me, it should be relevant to you. It only made sense for me to include my last 4 or 5 years of work experience because I just turned 25. So I really didn't have more relevant work experience before the last 5 years that would have helped make someone want to give me a good job. Okay, so experience, again, you're going to start with the most recent at the top. And like I mentioned, I took out a lot of the details, like the specific details about the things I accomplished and whatnot, because it's just what I'm most comfortable with for my past organization I worked with. But basically, I filled them in. If you look at these asterisks here, and I'm happy to elaborate on what you can put. So, one of the things that I think is really poignant that I wanted to point out, because I was applying to such big, global companies that really are working generally with enterprise or SMB customers, I wanted to note that I have experience working at a Fortune 100 company. So you've probably never heard of the name Tech Data, and that's because Tech Data does not work with the general public like you and I. They're working with the Apples, the Best Buys, the HPs, the various vendors throughout the world. And that's why I put right here in parentheses, a Fortune 100 company with revenue exceeding $30 billion a year. because if I hadn't, no one would know who the heck Tech Data is. And I think the fact that I was the global cybersecurity incident response manager at a Fortune 100 company that has revenue of 30 billion plus dollars a year speaks a lot. If I didn't include that in there, no one would know who Tech Data is, and they probably just pass it over without being like, oh, she's worked for a big enterprise. She knows what she's doing. Since beginning in this position, I have greatly reduced the time it takes for insert what you've improved. You want to talk about and play up what you have improved. What have you made more efficient? What have you made less manual? What have you automated? What have you saved time doing? What can a team focus on now that they couldn't because they were so bogged down by doing menial, is that the word? Like very boring tasks, very laborious things. What have you improved basically? So I literally took out what I improved here and what I greatly reduced the task and just put in asterisks. Um, it says, I have mentored the cybersecurity analysts to assist in advancing their skill sets and knowledge of incident response. I constructed a new procedure from the ground up wherein I made a beneficial change here, which allowed for blah, blah, blah. I think including a lot of cost and benefit statements is huge. When hiring managers or people who are reading these resumes are going through them, to see that you saved X amount of dollars by being creative and automating something or implementing a new process, and because of that, you achieved XYZ, those are huge things. They're looking for what you've improved, what you've saved, how you've bettered something, how you've saved more time. These are all huge, attractive statements that are going to stand out to anyone who's reading your resume. Utilize them. I also work closely with outside counsel, legal, and privacy teams to identify any necessary reporting requirements in accordance with local laws and regulations. I have simplified something. Simplified is a huge buzzword to basically automate something. I spearheaded the initiative of product evaluation to identify and purchase, insert the name of the tool that I helped spearhead the project for my organization, and have greatly reduced the number of blah, blah, blah kind of incidents year over year. Now, year over year, obviously, is a huge thing to mention because it's saying that from one year to the next, I'm progressively helping the organization improve on reducing the number of incidents. And for me specific in the jobs I was applying to, that's a huge thing, having that kind of knowledge and being able to utilize it to be beneficial in helping the organization. So all of these things that are in asterisks, these are huge standout statements, like I was saying earlier. Your buzzwords you're going to want to use are saving money, simplifying, cost and benefit statements, automating something, giving more time to a team or to an individual because you've made something less manual, improving a process, leading something, following something through from the beginning to the end. These are all huge things that you want to ensure to put in your experience. Obviously, if you don't have any, you don't have any, and you don't want to be untruthful about it, but I'm sure you have some, so make sure to utilize it in here. Experience is not, in my opinion, the place where you're going to put, I know how to use Microsoft Word. I'm really good at making PowerPoints. No, save that. Actually, I don't even want to talk about that. If that's all you have about you, that's fine. Absolutely put it in your resume if that is your shining accolade. But if you are several years into the industry and you're looking to level up by getting a more senior principal position, please don't put that you're good and proficient with Microsoft Office. Like, it's 2021. If you're not good with Microsoft Office, you're lacking. No one cares. Okay. So going back in time, cybersecurity incident response analyst. And again, I just list the company as well as the dates I was in the position. I like listing the dates I was in the position because frankly, I think I pretty rapidly promoted through the ranks, and that shows that I was a hard worker, that I was appreciated, that I was advancing, that my accomplishments were noted, etc. So this, I didn't have any asterisks to really tell you guys about. Again, just kind of take those standout statements that I told you about earlier and include them in all of your experience. So that's what I did for all of my jobs. The farther back I went, the less I had to say because the less relevant the job was to the job I was applying to. Now, skills. I'm going to tell you right ahead of time. My skills that I put here are going to be more business oriented and stakeholder oriented. Please, please, please keep in mind when you're writing your resume, even if you're applying for a 100% technical position, cybersecurity exists to support the business. That's the goal of cybersecurity, is to allow the business to carry on, continue making money so that everyone can receive the product or whatever it is that the company is selling so that everyone can keep their jobs and the business can prosper. So always remember to some extent and degree, tie back your skills or things you're putting in your resume to helping the business. People care about the business too. It's not just all about technical skills. You'll see here after I kind of read through this a bit that my skills section is much more business oriented and stakeholder oriented, like I mentioned. However, I did include some bullet point things that were relevant to the job that were a bit more technical. And if I scroll down to the bottom here, I took out all of the tools and technologies, like the specific vendor names and tools and technologies names, because again, I just didn't feel comfortable sharing all the different tools that I've been using at a company. However, this is where I really took the time to list out all of the tools I am proficient in by name, whether it's Wireshark or some kind of email security, etc. So I kind of separated my technical acumen from my more theoretical business acumen, if you will. That's my own personal choice. That was what worked best for me in this case. You don't have to do that. And I'll talk more about the tools and technology section a little bit. Let's cover the skills section right now. So again, the skills section, for me, this was to really highlight what makes me stand out from the candidate who's applying before me or the candidate who's applying after me. What can I put down on paper that correlates to the job description that's been posted online? When you're writing down your skills, I would highly recommend, if you have two monitors, putting on one monitor your resume that you're writing and putting on the other monitor the job description that lists out what skills it's searching for. And then I would go through the list in the job description and I would literally pick out the skills that are applicable to me, that I'm proficient and comfortable and actually skilled in, and I would transfer them into my own words over into my resume. Why? Because HR firewalls are a thing. It could be parsing through looking for key buzzwords like a certain regulation, law, or tool that you've worked with, and because the hiring manager thought that skill or tool technology was pertinent enough that they wanted to put it in a job description. If they're putting it in a job description, chances are it's kind of important to them and they want someone who has that skill set. So that's the first thing I would do. Look at the job description and then correlate over what you have in terms of skills and put that on your resume. After you've done all of that, then I would go through and look at what other skills do I have that the job description isn't asking for. You don't just want to stop at what the job description is asking for. Who knows? Maybe they could be asking for Azure skills in the job description, but you also have GCP and AWS skills. I would absolutely add in those AWS and GCP skills. You have no idea what's showing them how well-rounded of an individual you are and the extensive skill set you has. That's gonna be important, so long as it's relevant to the job though. Again, you don't want to put so much fluff in there that it detracts from their overall resume, and also it makes it kind of aesthetically ugly. Aesthetics are important, so keep that in mind. So for me, I tried to keep my first words in the same, what is it? The same tense, is it? I think. Like I didn't write anything in the past tense, I don't think. It's all experience, ability to, identifying, threat hunting, creating, leading, lots of INGs, lots of verbs going on. A lot of action words. I think those are very strong words. And my point with that was keep your tense the same throughout all of these. If you're going to put a period on one of them at the end, put a period on all of them at the end, or make the decision not to use any periods at all. Again, spacing was super important. I think just from a perspective of keeping things aesthetically pleasing, you should keep your spacing consistent. So if you want to read through some of my skills, you are welcome to do so. Basically, I put the things that I thought were most relevant to the job and correlated well over to the job description at the top, and then the ones that I felt would also be beneficial for the hiring manager to know about me, I added them at the end here. But resumes always, as I've said, go from most important at top to least important at the bottom. So always take that method into mind. My next section is about public speaking and community involvement. If you don't have any of this, I would absolutely try to put in here your extracurricular cybersecurity involvement, whether that's you're ranked in the top 10,000 on TryHackMe or you competed in a capture the flag consistently over the last few months, or you built your own AD lab at home and you've spun up virtual machines to try to replicate an SMB environment so you could go through, or you're detonating malware on a system that's not connected to your home network so that you can study it and examine it. If you don't have these kind of like notable public engagements, then I would absolutely fill that space by putting in your extracurriculars. You don't need to have speaking engagements and articles and books, etc., to be able to add it to a resume. Anything that lets your passion and your desire to work in the job shine through should absolutely be included in your resume. Articles, presentations, and interviews, I just separated these sections by speaking and writing because that was what worked best for me. Another thing I included was my cybersecurity Meg profile because, again, I feel like it makes me a well-rounded individual. It shows that I don't just take cybersecurity seriously during my day job, but it's something I'm extremely passionate about and is very important to me outside of work too. I think you can teach anyone how to use a technology. You can always make people more technical, but what you can't do is make someone care more than they innately do. That really, I think, helps shine through on a resume when you can convey that you are invested in cybersecurity, that you want to protect and defend the company or attack the company if you're looking for an OffSec role. The point being, if you can convey your passion for what you're trying to get into, all the more power to you. I think that speaks volumes. So, regarding the tools and technologies, I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. I had about 30 different technical tools and technologies that I was using from various, WAF to a SIM to EDR and AV and email security, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I listed all of them here. And that's because the job description I was applying for mentioned having experience with specific general tools. And oftentimes, when companies notice there's an applicant that has experience working in a tool that may be a little bit more granular or like majority of organizations nowadays are going to be using an EDR, right? Someone's probably using CrowdStrike or Carbon Black or Symantec, etc. That may not be too helpful, even though it's certainly a plus if you're familiar with CrowdStrike and the job description is asking for CrowdStrike experience. But if you have experience working with this little vendor who is off the beaten path that the job description is asking for, that's going to be wildly important to them. So, absolutely, it's something you should include. Any kind of tool or technology that you are proficient in, proficient being the keyword, meaning that you can go and use that tool or carry out that process with little to no intervention from someone else or just by doing Googling and researching, then I would put it in your tools and technologies list. If you've heard of it, if you've watched a YouTube video on it, you've never put your hands on it though, I would highly sit there and think, should I really be putting this on my resume? Because chances are, if you get the job, they might come back to you and be like, hey, Meg, I saw that you put that you're really good with CrowdStrike on your resume. Here's CrowdStrike. Go do this for me. And then you're going to sit there and be like, what do I do? And then it's not good. So just make sure to put things that you're proficient in so that it doesn't become a test if you get the job and they want you to utilize that tool right off the bat. Upcoming personal goals is a section that I choose personally to include because I think it shows what I'm looking forward to in the future. what am I going to be investing myself into? Like, where is Meg going in the future? What is she doing with herself? I think that's huge. And of course, you can speak about this more when you do get an interview, but I want to put it down on paper to show that I'm ambitious, where I want to go and where I'm heading is important to me. And I also think it really helps the hiring manager see if your future goals align with where the organization is trying to head to. For instance, if you want to get a SANS certification, and chances are a hiring manager knows you're going to want your company to pay for it, then that might be a discussion point during your interview. Of course, it's an interview topic, but still, it tells them, hey, this person is looking to take a $7,000 certification. Might want to bring that up. So that's my resume. If I had to give you a summary of tips, I would say you need to have people review your resume. I would have at least 3 to 5 trusted professional individuals review your resume. And they can help you catch any spacing errors, grammatical errors, syntax, anything of the sort. Definitely take the opinions of people you trust and who are professional and have experience with it to heart. Make your resume look as aesthetically pleasing as possible. No one wants to read a resume that is just all run together and looks terrible and overwhelming. Always prioritize what is most applicable and poignant about yourself that stands out at the very top and then go down. And if you can, try to let a little bit of your personality out. Have a little bit of fun with it. At the end of the day, it's cybersecurity. We all got to keep laughing and be kind to each other, else we're just all going to fail miserably. I hope you enjoyed this video. If anything, you're probably just nosy and you wanted to watch it because you're curious about what my resume looks like. I hope I've satiated that curiosity for you. If you have any feedback, comments, questions, leave it down in the comment section below. My next video will more than likely be about interviewing tips, which I'm going to be ecstatic to share with you too. So until then, my friends, have a fantastic day wherever you are. Ciao.